Hello and welcome everyone to TYT Community, News and Politics here. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. Thank you for joining us tonight here on TYT Community. I've got a great panel ready for you, the regulars. We've got Jordan, we've got Nick, we've got Sean. So going to have a lot of great discussion going on in the show today. We're going to talk a little bit about ISIS, Obamacare news, the Air Force's recent decision, proof that God exists, proof that we're a Christian nation because bacon. Yes, bacon. Stick around for that story. A lot of other great stories. So we're going to get to that. We're going to have a good first hour, and then I'm not sure what we're doing for the second hour or if we're doing a second hour because we may have to keep it short today. And, of course, programming note before we get started. No show next week. I'm moving. So, I'll obviously will not have internet access, and I will be moving my shit into a bigger studio. It's going to be great. But before we get going here, we've got an audio issue. What's wrong, Sean? What do we have?
I was trying to subtly check if you were coming in the same way with everybody. It's slightly off for me, but I don't know about everybody else. Sorry.
And okay, so
live. Sounds
everybody
okay.
here on the live stream, if we've got an audio issue, please let me know. I'm checking the chat, so just to make sure before we get started here, to actually make sure that our audio is not shit. All right, I'm not seeing anything, so I guess we can get started. Once again, thank you guys for coming out here and watching the show, and thank you, Sean, Jordan, Nick, for coming out here and being on the panel. Jordan, of course, broadcasting from his truck, which is awesome. And that's...
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So we're going to start with our first segment here, Manning. So Chelsea Manning has broken her silence on the ongoing conflict with the Islamic State. Writing an op-ed for The Guardian from her cell in Fort Leavenworth, Manning criticizes President Obama's plan for action against ISIS. Now, what did she have to say? Well, she writes, quote, based on my experience as an all-sourced analyst in Iraq during the organization's relative infancy, ISIS cannot be defeated by bombs and bullets, even as the fight is taken to Syria, and even if it's conducted by non-Western forces with air support. Now, interesting. I happen to agree with a little bit of that, but we'll continue with Manning. She says, quote, attacking ISIS directly by airstrikes or special operations forces is a very tempting option available to policymakers, with immediate but not always good results. Fortunately, when the West fights fire with fire, we feed into a cycle of outrage, recruitment, organizing, and even more fighting that goes back decades. It's exactly what happened in Iraq during the height of the Civil War in 2006 and 2007, and it can only be expected to occur again. Now, this is a lesson that I think we should have learned by now from us doing things like, I don't know, signature strikes, for example, where we don't know who we're bombing, but we fucking bomb them anyway, and that's how we end up bombing weddings, funerals, children, innocent people, along with the occasional terrorist. We do get them. Manning continues, quote, I believe that ISIS strategically feeds off the mistakes and vulnerabilities of the very democratic Western states that they decry. The Islamic State's center of gravity is, in many ways, the United States, the United Kingdom, and those aligned with them in the region. So basically what she's trying to say is that we're the focus, we are the cause, the creation, and the focus of ISIS in the region. I mean, it only makes a lot of sense because they're taunting us with the continued beheadings and the shitty video they came out with just recently. They want us involved. So what does Chelsea Manning suggest? She says, quote, "I believe that only a very focused and consistent strategy of containment can be effective in reducing the growth and effectiveness of ISIS as a threat." Well, how do you do that? Well, Manning says you have to counter the narrative, set some clear temporary borders, stop payment for ransom of hostages, prevent ISIS from stealing artifacts and treasures to basically kind of slow their income, and of course prevent them from taking oil fields. Make sense? Now finally she says let them set up their own failed state in a contained area and basically wait for them to implode. Quote, "Eventually, if they're properly contained, I believe that ISIS will not be able to sustain itself on rapid growth alone. It will begin to fracture internally. The organization will begin to disintegrate into several smaller, uncoordinated entities, ultimately failing in their objective of creating a strong state. ISIS is wielding a sharp, heavy, and very deadly double-edged sword. Now just wait for them to fall on it." Interesting. I actually really enjoyed reading this op-ed, and I agree with a lot of these points. But let's go to the panel's reaction on this. Nick, what do you think?
She does raise some very good points. At the start, I was initially in agreement with her, but thinking on it more, I don't think that'll necessarily work. For one very particular reason. The head of ISIS is a former Saddam Hussein, at the very least army official, I think. And a lot of the people who were fighting with ISIS are maybe, are not necessarily fighting, but also working with ISIS, were former Saddam Hussein officials. They have some of the people there who do have the capacity to, in some ways, govern and manage bureaucracy and administration for an area. So it's not just that they're moving fast. It's also that they do have some people in positions of leadership who have prior experience with governing a country. So it's possible she's right. But I think it's also possible that they won't implode. We see that every now and then too. There's lots of popular rising movements, if you will, that succeed and are built off of momentum that then stabilize. Turkey's Turkey because of that. Granted, this was over a much longer period of time. We're talking centuries and centuries of Turkish migration into the region and various different sultanates, but yeah, when they were done being nomadic, they settled and they set up bureaucracy. And it could be rocky, but they figured it out. There's a lot of historical examples we can look at that go either way, and I think it's a little difficult of a situation to accurately predict which way it would go if we did that. So it's an interesting thought experiment. I would say cautious interaction and cautious military intervention into the situation, not like boots on the ground stuff. We're talking, as she mentions earlier, small special forces strikes and things like that, and a couple airstrikes. Opportune strikes like that, I think, for now would be the wisest, most prudent course of action, and while giving the region overall some broader space in terms of any stronger military action. But it might be worth trying, but it's also a double-edged sword, because if it doesn't work, you have a radical state there. So
yeah, Nick brings up some good historical points, but the problem and the reason why I think Chelsea Manning is right that the airstrikes in our bombing campaign will lead to more people joining ISIS is because we're essentially like picking a Shiite side in a civil war. Like, we're saying we're not going to work with Iran, we're saying we're not going to work with the Shiites, but Maliki's government was a Shiite government. We installed them. Like, they're painting themselves, and ISIS, of course, doesn't represent all Sunnis. They're painting themselves as a Sunni uprising against an oppressive Shia state, and we're going to put them down, but we wouldn't interfere with Assad, and we wouldn't interfere with, we wouldn't stop Maliki. We left, and we let him do whatever he wanted. Like, this is what they're going to say that we're doing. So, like, it will, to me, like, this intervention does draw more people under the banner of ISIS that probably would not normally have joined them. And as far as them being able to hold territory temporarily, they should be able to hold at least the Sunni parts of what is the fiction that is Iraq. But there's no way they're going to be able to hold the Shiite parts of Iraq. Like, they're not going to keep advancing like this. You know, this caliphate that we're being warned about by like the crazies is not going to keep going. Like, they're not going to be able to hold the Shiite territories for the same reasons that the Shiite weren't able to hold the Sunni territories. So, like, maybe a little mixture, maybe like a third or three-state idea, but not. It's not going to be like a caliphate or anything that we're being told. Jordan?
Yeah, excellent points all around, both from you guys and from Chelsea. And I guess the thing what I have a hard time getting behind Chelsea's stance is basically she's saying, let them fall on their own sword, let them become a bureaucracy and fall apart or whatever. But how many people die in the interim? And it's not. And again, obviously, if we start a war, people die as well. But I mean, ISIS has made it clear that they're not just interested in people dying; like they're interested in ethnic cleansing and genocide. And do the Yazidis still exist after whatever amount of time has to pass for ISIS to collapse if we let it, run its own devices? I think that evil is destructive, and I think right. And I'm one of the many voices out there who's saying that what has been suggested is probably not the way to go, but I don't know what the way to go is. And I know that it's not really a helpful position to hold in any debate, just to say something's wrong and not offer an alternative. But I don't know what it is. Chelsea's maybe the best one so far, but.
Right. Well, Jordan, Chelsea sort of addresses what your concerns, right? That's about setting up those clear borders and making sure to enforce those, right? And making sure that you steer them away from these possible humanitarian crises. Like, basically let the crazy fundamentalists live in their own little state. That's going to fall apart because they're going to fight it out. And just make sure to enforce those borders and make sure, draw a very clear line between, ISIS and the coming failed ISIS state and any places like the home of the Yazidis, essentially.
So who enforces those borders?
It would have to be probably a coalition.
Because this region can't enforce their own borders now. That's why there's a problem. What?
Coalition of what? Coalition of who?
That would be to determine later, I guess.
We don't have
a coalition of the neighboring states. Like, they don't enforce their own borders right now. That's why problems like this exist, because the borders are so porous.
Nor do they actually have a professional military strength to enforce their own borders. These states barely control their own people. They control. That's why they control so heavy-handedly as the way they do, is because they're terrified that if they release any grip, that things will break out and move beyond their control. That's why you clamp down on things so hard, and why you try and stamp out and snuff out resistance and opposition as quickly as you can, because you know that you don't have the force to counter anything serious. And I want to go back to a couple of Sean's points, because Sean made a bunch of very good points. The best one, of course, is obviously the one that if we drop bombs, we will be making more terrorists. This has been proven time and time again. And there are ways of handling it, of getting around it. The obvious one being we don't do Operation Rolling Thunder version 2.0, which I know we're not really technically doing that, but it's really having the same effect, because we're clearly demonstrating we don't give enough of a shit about the lives of civilians to avoid hitting targets that we think are worth hitting. So that's a problem. The way and that's also tricky because then you got to look back into counter history and see, well, how should we have handled things like Vietnam and stuff instead? And so far from what I've seen, the prevailing theory was basically simply police work in the cities. Don't actually go out and try and hunt these guys because that's where you get fucked over. But that requires boots on the ground, which brings us back to the problem. So Sean's right in pointing up that dilemma. There is no doubt that is a serious quandary that needs to be addressed and needs to be thought out before we go any further. As to his point about there won't be a caliphate, given the way things are going, no, you're probably right. But that doesn't necessarily mean there couldn't. And I'm not talking Lindsey Graham sort of doom and gloom. Oh my God, help me! My poor southern sensibilities, they're so threatened. None of that shit. No, we're talking about a region in the world where people generally don't like being repressed, at least by the same old song and dance over and over again. They might overthrow repression and find they're replaced with more repression, but there's generally some power swapping in those situations, and a couple views might change here and there. So the people who feel repressed might feel liberated in those scenarios, and there might be some truth to that in this situation. And I think the concern and the need to contain it. ISIS is based on that fear that if it's not contained, that draws more support from people who feel marginalized in these regions, which is a problem. And make no mistake, there's a lot of Sunnis out there who do not like the monarchs of Saudi Arabia and the royal families. They do not like them. There are some hardline Wahhabi Muslims who dislike the monarch family, who think that they are not following Islam to the tenets. So there are those elements out there, and the fear is, and granted, getting involved doesn't necessarily abate those fears because that might push more of them to it. So it's very tricky, and that's why I said it really could go either way. Really on any side of this, if we do what we continue to do, or if we follow Chelsea Manning's advice. So.
All right. I just want to make two very quick points that I've actually heard on Fox to show you how messed up this issue is, because they've actually been slightly right on some things. The first is the last 4 presidents of the United States, if you count this president and this action, will have engaged in a separate military action against Iraq. If the 3 didn't work before, let's chill the hell. Like, it's not going to work this time. And the other point is, in the Middle East, the enemy of my enemy is still our enemy, so let's not take sides.
And to sort of round it out, I don't really think we're going to take Chelsea Manning's advice just as a policy perspective.
No,
because,
really.
No. Hold on. I really doubt that we're going to be doing that. I think it's going to be drone strikes and airstrikes all the way, because that's what President Obama is going to do. And we're also going to arm the Syrian rebels to fight against ISIS, but we don't know which rebels are ISIS and which are not. And so we're just going to continue fucking up the region even more.
Yeah, I would. I didn't want to point out this awesome story on NPR today. Cornish interviewed Sean Harris of the Conflict Arms Research Institution. And like basically what this group does is they go in, and after like battles happen or people are captured, they catalog the weapons and figure out where they came from. And ISIS is fighting with a lot of U.S. equipment, and we haven't armed ISIS officially or directly. But the problem is we arm moderate rebels or the Peshmerga, whoever it is, and if they get beaten, then ISIS take those weapons. That's what happened with the Iraqi army. Now, I get the other side is that, if we arm them, they don't get beaten. But man, is that a gamble that we want to take? Like, there's no way around it. We're going to end up arming ISIS, for better or worse.
It's not a good situation either way. All right, less depressing news. Well, actually, somewhat depressing. What else do we do on this show? I depressed the shit out of you for 2 hours. We're going to continue. But at least I have funny graphics. Before I depress you more. So with the midterms fast approaching, we thought it was time to check into the healthcare law and see how much of an impact it will have in, say, Kentucky. Now, Kentucky has an exchange set up called Connect, which has been pretty effective in getting people health insurance. According to a recent Gallup poll, the uninsured rate dropped from 20% to around 12%. Now, most of those are, of course, low-income Kentuckians signing up for Medicaid. It's pretty good, right? Well, for example, one of those Kentuckians, and this was in an article in the New York Times, they mentioned a woman by the name of Robin Evans. Now, she works as a warehouse packer for about $9 an hour. She's got high blood pressure and something called Graves' disease, which sounds pretty grave. Go on if you want. Now, she used to be uninsured, meaning she wasn't able to get treatment before the law. And I'm assuming Graves sort of counts as a pre-existing condition, meaning she wasn't able to get insurance, probably due to that. But now she has Medicaid. Now, how does she feel about having Medicaid? Quote, "I'm tickled to death with it. It's helped me out a bunch." Great. Mission accomplished. So we can all assume that she's voting against Mitch McConnell then, who has pretty much said that he would rip out the health care law root and branch. Right? Right? Not so much. Quote, "Born and raised Republican. I ain't planning on changing now." So there you go. Even with all the successes in Kentucky and around the nation, there are still people who hate the president so much that they'll vote against their own interests. For example, the same woman said this about Obama. Quote, "Nobody don't care for nobody no more, and I think he's got a lot to do with that." That doesn't even make any sense. Nobody don't care for nobody no more? I don't... Oh...
The double negatives, they hurt. They hurt.
This is a mindset, I think, that really just kind of boggles me when people vote against their own interests. And sadly, there are enough people in Kentucky who will still probably do it and vote for Mitch McConnell. And not to say Allison Grimes is all that much better. She's got her own problems. And she's even distancing herself from the health care. But seriously, what the hell is wrong with people these days? Sean, what do you think?
So, like Bill Maher has a good line about this, about how people vote for what they want, but they never vote to say thank you, right? So this would be an example, if you're of that opinion, of that in practice. But this actually traces back to if you've read the book or seen the movie Freakonomics, like people actually vote on what they believe is a national interest and not very much on a selfish interest. And like maybe that's a mixture of ignorance and like nobleness, or if you want to call it a noble ignorance, then maybe that's the cause. But a lot of the times people will vote against their self-interest if they think if they think it will better the country or something like that. And maybe she's of that mind, but it's just funny that she got Medicaid through the Medicaid expansion, which the Democratic governor accepted the expansion through Obamacare, and like she's like happy with her Medicaid, I assume, but is voting for Mitch McConnell, who is against it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But like again, she might be a vehement one-issue pro-lifer or a one-issue gun person or something like that. We don't know.
Yeah, that last point I think is a lot of it. Now, obviously, a lot of it is just the whole tribalism thing, my tribe versus your tribe. And President Obama is not in her tribe, you know, he's not in her party tribe, he's not in her race tribe, you know, like there's so many different things that, you know, she sees him as other than. But it could very much be the whole one issue thing. I know very, very reasonable people, you know, who will admit that they're one-issue voters, and you know, I think there's some issues that might be, you know, important enough for that, and then there's other people that won't admit they're one-issue voters, but that's, you know, what it comes down to. And then there's other people who just, vote for the side they're supposed to vote for, their quote-unquote tribe. But to her point about, people not caring for each other, like, okay, so you hate this law that as flawed as it is, brought health care to people, and it's called Obamacare, and it made us at least not be completely backwards in terms of developed nations and healthcare access, and then in the same breath turn around and say you're not voting for him because people don't care for people and it's his fault. Like, you hate this, the one of the most caring laws of all time is, again, as flawed as it is. I'm not here to sing praises about Obama, but like, clearly there's a disconnect here between her values and and President Obama's record, and I think it comes down to probably us versus them mentality, or she could be a one-issue voter.
I'm more inclined to think that she's a tribalist, right? Born and raised Republican. I ain't planning on changing now. That pretty much sums up where she's at. I've always been a Republican. Never mind that Republicans have moved incredibly far right to the fringes, because she's like around 50 years old, I believe. So she was around back when, I don't know, the Republicans were less batshit crazy right wing and would actually come up with certain ideas to actually help the country and help people instead of just corporations, who I guess are people.
Yeah, no,
according to them.
That's an excellent point. I mean, you get that a lot in the South. On both sides. They're just straight yellow dog Democrats down here who are as racist as they can possibly be. But whenever Obama's in the ballot, they vote for him because he's the Democrat. But they're just they'll run him down his entire presidency and say horrible things about his race, but they voted for him.
Politics is a strange thing, man. It's a strange thing. But yeah, there's not a whole lot to say on that story.
I got something to say. Hold on. So, I think this woman stands as a mixture of both. Might be slightly tribalist, might be a one-issue voter, but I think possibly more than that, she's I would say maybe a disinterested voter, first and foremost. I mean, I might have mentioned this before. There's a couple different ways people look at the world. I think Voltaire, in his book Candide, raised an interesting one, where at the end they're saying we must each cultivate our own garden. And the viewpoint advocated there was that, like, don't worry about bigger things or bigger issues. Focus on yourself and your family and your immediate community and work on making that good or comfortable for you or whatever. And I think there's a lot of people who ascribe to that view, who just, politics, no, I don't care. I just don't follow it, and I don't want to follow it. I'd rather focus on this immediate here and now. And so when pressed into it, I think that's where you get the fallback into the either the tribalism thing or the one-issue voter thing. So that would be where I would think of probably most people who say they're A, not interested in politics, or B, who possibly vote against their interests would fall. They're for the most part, they're just disinterested.
Can we also point out that this is extremely normal in America? Like, if you ask people what are their main issues and how they vote, oftentimes it's extremely contradictory. So this woman is American.
Fair enough. And look, I just want to point out there, too, it's not as if she's against the law because of its flaws, right? I don't think she's aware of the actual real flaws. I think she just ties it into Obamacare, Obama, evil, bad, right? When people, and a lot of us on the left here, or at least some of us on the left, we haven't fully taken the Obamacare as fantastically awesome line. Some of us have, and that's unfortunate, because there are some real glaring issues. Remember, before it was Obamacare, it was Romney Care. It's a Republican plan, and I always have to point this out whenever we do a story on the ACA is that it was it was hatched from the Heritage Foundation, and now they won't own it. So, but that's a completely different story on that. But a single-payer system would have been so much better, and I don't even know if she would have complained all that much if she had. But you never know. So, I don't know. Like I said, politics is very difficult. You've got the tribalism angle. You've got the naming, the very expensive ads that were continuously slamming the law, etc., propaganda, all the stuff that feeds into this narrative, that feeds into these people's understanding of the law or misunderstanding of the law. So a lot of that can explain how Miss Evans and people all over America, especially in the South, feel about this, despite being personally helped by it. All right. So this is in an unsurprising move last week, Senate Republicans blocked a bill that would repeal Citizens United and parts of the 1976 Buckley v. Vallejo decision. Now, we all saw this coming, of course, but I'm going to take a little bit of a different spin on this, and I think that actually this might work out in our advantage. Well, why? Well, because to me, I think it might help make the issue more visible. And it also helps to show where these politicians stand on this issue. So for anybody who's paying attention, this could be a thing pointing out, saying, hey, your politicians love being drowned in money and listening to donors more than they listen to you. For somebody who doesn't pay a whole lot of attention, but to hear about that, that might get them a little pissed. Now, for example, Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, we all know, loves Citizens United. He loves McCutcheon. He's been lobbying in order to get more money into politics for pretty much his entire career, and now he drowns in corporate cash. He is a corporate whore who is always up for auction. Now, he, of course, led the movement in the Senate to defeat this proposed amendment, and he actually wrote a ridiculous op-ed in Politico calling this vote an assault on free speech. He writes, quote, the Democrats who control the Senate say that they're more interested in repealing the free speech protections the First Amendment guarantees to all Americans. Their goal is to shut down the voices of their critics at a moment when they fear the loss of their fragile Senate majority. Hey, Mitch, you know what shuts down Americans' voices? Being drowned out by a fuck ton of money, and allowing basically people who have more money than they do to have more speech rights than they do. So, it's obvious that Congress is useless. And I think that the Democrats are actually doing something interesting by forcing these people to go on record to say how much they love the fact that our government is bought and paid for. And McConnell goes on about the Democrats trying to get votes, right? Well, I really don't give a fuck about that, right? It's not about the votes. It's not about the Democrats. I think the reason more Democrats are backing this is because it is popular. And I want to point out how popular. So far, 16 states have demanded Congress take action, and I think after this, hopefully we're going to see more of them. Hopefully we're going to see more states adopt this resolution and bypass Congress, or get to the point where Congress says, okay, we do need to pass this because the American people are going to get it through one way or the other. So I kind of want to get everybody's take on this one.
I actually have something maybe a little controversial to say here, but this bill didn't need to pass. But before I do that, now that I've buried the lead, I don't know if you mentioned the date, but do you know when this bill was blocked in the House?
I believe it was, what was it, the 11th?
It was September 11th. It was the day that the House blocked the amendment to get money out of politics. Just I don't want that to go unmentioned. But then to say the way the bill is written now, it was, it started out as what I was sure was just one of those crazy fear-mongering statements. I believe, I'm so sorry, I'm in my truck, I don't get to do quite as much prep as I'd like, but I believe it was Ted Cruz that said this bill could get Lorne Michaels arrested if he made a political sketch or whatever, and PolitiFact checked it, and it was rated half true or mostly true, because the way the bill was worded, that could totally happen. Now they did point out like there's no precedent for anything this Supreme Court has showed us, and the last two executive administrations have showed us. It's that whenever that they don't care about overturning precedent, they'll take away your Fourth Amendment rights. They'll overturn all sorts of legal precedent for money in politics. So I don't want to open the door for future governments, because this government has proven time and time again that we're moving towards a police state here. And I don't want that power there, as unfeasible as it may seem. But, so then what you say to that is, okay, well, you change the language in the bill, because that's what a legislative body is supposed to do, is discuss bills and pass bills. And you frickin' discuss the bill and pass the bill, and you fix that one little problem with the bill, and you get politics.
Yeah, so, like, Jordan brought up the point, and I'm surprised that he brought it up, because it's the point I was going to bring up. It's the nuance. It's my nuanced position on Citizens United. Like, the outside groups spending money. Like, I get that it's a joke that they're not connected with the candidates. We all know that they're connected with the candidates. But outside groups spending money on political speech should be protected speech. And I know that's like controversial and all that. But yeah, if it's a political comedy sketch or a political movie and it was released at the time. Like, I don't know if people get arrested, but you get like movies, which was what Citizens United was about, Hillary the movie, will get banned preemptively, and like that is contrary to the First Amendment. So like you tweak it and you try and make it work in a way that basically, if the bill said that it allows Congress to make rules to regulate themselves, or if the bill said we're going to do public financing of elections, like that's it, that's just what we're going to do for our Congress. But it didn't interfere with media and like outside spending, and they actually had a clear line between what is given to the candidate and what is done, as far as free speech, like what is done separate from the candidate. Then I would be fine with it. Like, but it's the weird issue I have with the Citizens United ruling that I think it's kind of right. Next.
Well, I don't have much to say on this being an outsider, so I'll just I'll leave it for you guys.
All right. Well, okay. So once again, when I opened, I said that this bill passing actually kind of a good thing, because it actually gets us to do the convention, right? It gets us. I think it gets people thinking about doing a constitutional convention. That's where all of this nuance stuff can get ironed out.
Now, this
and
bill
I think
was
this was essentially a ploy to get attention.
This bill wasn't to get an Article 5 convention. An Article 5 convention.
I know it wasn't.
It's the other one.
I know. Guys, I'm aware of this. What I'm trying to say is that this bill was to get attention. And
I thought you said it was to get us to
by having this in the media, in the news. You're putting people on record saying that this is my vote for this. I'm in favor of massive money in politics, or I'm against massive money in politics, and it's really to sort of raise the media fervor, get people to cover it a little bit, and then you get people thinking about, well, how can we actually get money out of politics? Do a little research, and you come up with Article 5. With all these different groups trying to push an Article 5 convention, that seems like the way to go. And then you can iron out all the little problems with actual free speech, making political movies, etc., 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 all the valid points that you guys raise up. Like I said, I think that this is it's actually a good first step, because it puts it on the map.
It's the good symbolism in Congress, like, because the bill is symbolic, and I don't know if any of the senators actually believe it, or a majority of them actually believe it. but it's the good symbolism that you want to get people on record. And just one correction, Jeff, you said 16 states have demanded a convention. 16 states have done that thing where they ask Congress for a convention. One state has demanded it, and that is the great state of Vermont.
Thank you for that correction. But that's one, Vermont leading the way. So hopefully others will begin to follow, especially after this vote. And basically, if there's any time to fight for a constitutional amendment, now's the time. Now that the issue is getting raised and people are starting to pay attention, now's the time to do it. All right, next story. Now, recently, the Air Force got a ton of criticism for kicking out an unnamed airman because he refused to recite the words "So help me God" as part of his re-enlistment oath. Now, in light of this, the Air Force Public Affairs Office recently announced that that a policy change was in order. So, no longer will it be mandatory to say "So help me God" during a re-enlistment oath or an enlistment oath if the individual chooses not to. Deborah Lee James, the Secretary of the Air Force, said, quote, we take any instance in which airmen report concerns regarding religious freedom seriously, and we are making the appropriate adjustments to ensure our airmen's rights are protected. So this situation, to me, sort of brings up an important discussion on the role religion is playing in the government right now. But before I get too ahead of myself, I want to get the panel's reaction on what you think of this whole change.
About fucking time. That's all I have to say, really. Like, Jesus Christ, it took them long enough. The swearing to God thing should have never been on a condition in the first damn place. I mean, what the hell is this? England before the Catholic emancipation? What is that bullshit? You don't get to fucking do that. You don't get to say you have to believe in this God before you can actually serve or hold office. This isn't 200 years ago. That's not acceptable.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump in right there. Hold on, and make a real quick point and point out why I don't really give a damn about it. And it's not because I'm religious. It's because of what Nick just said. Jesus Christ. How long ago should this have happened? So help me God is no longer a religious statement. Like I get that they're doing it on principle, but like this is not about the Air Force. Like the Air Force isn't forcing them to wear a religious emblem to go to a service. It's a figure of speech that has truly lost its meaning, and it's basically all you're saying is this is a solemn oath I'm swearing. And like, it's not religious oppression. I'm not saying that we shouldn't throw it out because, I mean, it's still there. But, I mean, it's just like every time you write a date, you're writing 2014 in the year of our Lord. It's just, that is equally as religious as saying, so help me God when taking an oath.
Yeah, so but that one has some pushback.
I get the principle. I get the principle that they're going for. And I'm totally on board with it. There should be no test for serving the military or office. But this is don't bring up the CE crap, Nick. That's not real. But,
bastard, you knew where I was going with that.
Although it's funny in my religious degree we used BCE and CE, and in my history degree we used AD. It's
actually
BC.
kind of amazing.
But anyway, yeah, like this was not, and the Air Force has a very, very strong history of actually forcing religion on people. So maybe that's why they chose this part to make their stand or whatever, you know. But the phrase itself, it doesn't bother me, and that's not because I'm religious. It's because it's not really a religious phrase anymore.
Yeah, don't steal my thunder, Jordan. That's exactly what I was going to get in. This specific thing about the "So help me God" and the oath, like whatever, making it non-mandatory is a good thing, but it's not as big an impact as the Air Force culture, and certain parts of our military have a strong Christian culture, like that. they tell you, I better see you in the pews at this time and all that, and like that's more important. We've actually done maybe 1 or 2 stories on that in the past about how leadership in certain special forces unit are very like Christian pushy on their people, on the people that come in, and it's like you don't get accepted unless you're with them at all points, including at religious services. So like the cultural thing is way more important than this oath thing. That being said, I don't like disagree with making it optional.
But here's hold on. Here's the thing. Here's the thought, though. Where did the culture element come from? I mean, I don't necessarily think it came from that thing being in the oath either. At the same time, you can't help but speculate. Perhaps it being an element of the oath did mean other religious groups didn't feel welcome in the Air Force, and maybe that it did contribute somehow to the culture build the way it did. So I don't. And I get what Jordan's saying. And Jordan, you're right. It is, for the most part, it's just a turn of phrase that's common now, in the same way saying Jesus Christ is. It doesn't have that much of an impact, but it still has even a tiny, tiny smidge of some sort of impact. And
yeah, totally.
It's
that impact that I think it's, for that reason, it shouldn't be there. I mean, we can talk about how ridiculous it is the Queen of frickin' England still has to be the Anglican because it's the head of the Anglican Church. So if we want to talk about ridiculousness and shit like that, I mean, it's things. A lot of old religious things remain the way they are, remain in institutions because, honestly, even part of tradition. And that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be changed, even if it is only out of principle.
I think that it is important enough of an issue, because it made it so that somebody couldn't re-enlist. That's sort of an important issue. If it actively prevents people from enlisting in something that they want to enlist in, just because they don't, say a phrase or hold a certain belief, it is important. Maybe the phrase itself is unimportant, but the idea behind having to swear a phrase like this or to say an oath like this with this involved, that's the meaning behind it is more important than the words themselves.
Yeah, and I think it does have a strong, I just lost the word, but the fact that it's the swearing in oath, even though like the phrase itself is completely inconsequential in our culture, it does have a symbolic meaning, because I get why they picked this battle to fight, because it's what opens the door, to get you in the Air Force where you actually do have the problem. So I mean, I'm with them. I get where they're coming from.
Right, and to Jeff's point, Jeff made a devastating point that it prevented somebody or some people from being able to re-enlist. Just think about how dumb that is. Like, it is not flying a plane is not like driving a car. Everybody can't learn to do it. Like, these are people with special sets of skills who are being prevented from re-enlisting. They're like the only people who want to join the military now. Like, because recruiting is down. You guys know what I'm saying. But like, you're preventing people with skills that can do the job from redoing the job. Like, it's so dumb. But like, to my overall point, I still think the culture is more prudent. But this is a good gesture. Like, it's good to have it optional.
It might be a step in changing the culture, because it might generate a feeling of inclusivity for other religious groups. I just want to actually read a comment from one of our audience members here, and because I think it kind of summarizes perhaps the opinion of people who might have been interested in the Air Force but then saw the oath. This person says, "I may exclaim Jesus Christ and shit like that, but I will never be forced to say something like 'So help me God' in a binding oath." So.
Not to mention that it's also unconstitutional. It's basically, I forget the phrase. Maybe you could help me out, Sean. In the Constitution, that you should establish no religion or establish no oath of religion to office.
Oh, it's no religious oath shall be test of public office. And that technically refers to the Congress and the executive, but the military is under the executive, so it makes sense.
Right. Thank you. So it is unconstitutional. And so, as we'd have, but the other point is and we've already been having this discussion, is the pervasiveness, and not just in the military, which is very pervasive in the military, but it's also very pervasive in our society. And a couple of examples of that is, what is it? For one, I wanted to point out how, unlike our money in the Pledge of Allegiance, the Air Force has been switching this rule. First they brought it back, then it got challenged, then they took it back. This was put into place in September, like early September, and then it was taken back out. So it had been optional, and they're like, nope, not optional anymore. Oh, you have a problem? Now it's optional again. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's just it's nuts, man.
But
It's disheartening.
to be fair to the evangelicals in the Air Force, there have been 27 traitors since they removed this, right? Like since they removed that part of the oath, they've immediately started betraying the Air Force and bombing American cities, right? That happened?
I don't think that's happened. I don't think that's happened. So, but anyway. I was going to start railing against the, Christian majority and the chipping away of church and state, but maybe I shouldn't at this point, because I've had enough of those rants as of late. Maybe I should just let that one go and just say good on the Air Force for making it optional. If you want to swear to an deity, to a sky god, that's cool. If you don't, that's cool. If you want to serve, that's cool. Do you? We go forward. Oh wow, I didn't put any spaces in that. Oh well. Sad day.
Spaces are for squares.
Apparently. Now, Brian Fisher knows that America is truly a Christian nation. Well, how, you ask? Well, I want to let him explain.
And you want one single item of proof that America is a Christian nation and not a Jewish nation and not an Islamic nation? One single bit of proof is all you need. We freely allow restaurants and grocery stores to sell and to serve bacon. That can only happen in a Christian country. You can't do that in Israel. I've been to Israel. You go into the hotel to eat dinner, go into a restaurant, you can't get bacon there in it. You're not going to get it. Why? Because it is a Jewish country. You go to a Muslim country, you are not going to get pork, you're not going to get bacon, you're not going to get a ham sandwich anywhere. Why? Because it is a Muslim land. So the sheer fact that we freely allow the sale and consumption of bacon is absolute proof that we are, in fact, a Christian nation.
There it is. Israel. Obviously, you can't buy pork. Except that in some places you actually can. Not in all places, of course. There are stores that are kosher. There are stores that are halal. And there are also stores that are not. In fact, they actually raise pork in northern Israel. And that's done by Arabic Christians. They raise pork. So I'm sure someplace, if you really want it, you could get a ham sandwich in Israel. Same with, Turkey. You can also probably get some ham. They're a secular nation. Yes, they're primarily Muslim, and it's probably not easy to find, but I'm sure somewhere you could probably get a strip of bacon. But really, none of that even matters at this point, because there's nothing stopping a secular country from also selling bacon. If that's your proof, I think your movement is really on shaky ground. Look, hey, you know what? I have proof that we're a secular nation. You know why? Because people work on Sundays and aren't stoned to death. Because we have red lobsters everywhere. That's proof. We're a secular nation. Obviously, we have red lobsters everywhere. Or because we have the Gap. Secular nation. What? What? Is that your proof? I can go on. But you know what? Before I go too crazy, I'm going to throw it over to my panel.
Yeah. To this guy's point about how come you can't find bacon everywhere in Israel like you can in the United States, is because the majority of the people can't eat bacon or don't religiously eat bacon. It's not banned, but they don't religiously eat bacon. So if you're the bacon salesman, you're not going to get very much business. It's going to be in focused, targeted areas. You know, when I was in Florida, I couldn't find the same amount of Korean alcohol that I find in my Korean neighborhood because there weren't a lot of people to like that alcohol in that region. It's weird how the market works. So this guy's obviously a moron. Also, bacon was actually invented, or cured pork was invented in the 11th, or became popular in the 11th to the 14th century in the late Middle Ages. So surprisingly, it wasn't handed out to people by Jesus with bread and fish, as this pastor would lead us to believe, as this person would lead us to believe. But yeah, this is obviously not proof that that America is a Christian country. And by the way, there are places in America where bacon is illegal. In Los Angeles, it's illegal to sell bacon-wrapped hot dogs. Obviously, Los Angeles, the city of angels, Jesus' angels, has banned bacon because it is not holy.
So oh my God, I have to say, Sean, Korean booze, really? But we'll get to that in a minute. First, I have to yell at Brian Fisher. So I can't believe he even bothered making this argument. For one very simple reason. Last time I checked, Brian Fisher devotes most of his responses and most of his hates to fucking secularists. Why is he suddenly drawing it as if there's no such thing as secularists in this triad of religious options? It's like, that's all you focus on your show. And now you're pretending they don't exist for this one point? What the fuck are you talking about? Oh, he's just like, oh my fucking God. Okay, so now back to you, Sean. Korean booze? Really?
All right,
and
all
off
right.
to Jordan.
So, Nick kind of hit where I wanted to go with this. Like he just made an excellent argument that America is not a Christian nation, but a secular one, because we don't ban things for religious reasons at a national level. Now, we do give halal and kosher businesses the right to do that in their place of business, because that's what, autonomy and self-governance is all about, and a wall between church and state. And more importantly, to Mr. Fisher's wrongness, the reason that we say America is not a Christian nation is not because we want to, be PC or whatever. It's because America is not a Christian nation. It's because we were written to be. Our Constitution was written as one of, if not the first, secular founding documents of any nation in history. And more explicitly, in 1797, we signed the Treaty of Tripoli. This is President John Adams' signature on this thing. And Article 11 is, as the government of the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character or enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of what we would now call Muslims. As the states have never entered into any war, if only we could say that was true now, or act of hostility against the Muslim nation, it is declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinion shall ever produce an interpretation of the harmony existing between the two countries. In this case being, it's the government in Tripoli and the United States. But we have a document from what we would call one of the founding fathers that says the United States is in no sense a Christian nation.
Damn, Jordan. bringing facts to the
but do
table.
you know where Tripoli is located?
Libya,
Benghazi.
near Benghazi. No, yeah, Jordan's totally right.
No,
about
it's not. There's a Tripoli in Syria too. There's 2 Tripolis.
Oh. Well,
Surprise!
Nick
Geography lesson.
Nick is the smart one, obviously. But yeah, obviously the United States is not. It's not a Christian nation. You have a lot of Christians in it, and a lot of people who eat bacon. So there's bacon everywhere. But this is not proof of like any religiosity. Like it's a ridiculous argument, and I really, really, really think that this guy just wanted to become internet famous. So he looked at what's trending, bacon, and he decided to talk about it in a religious context. But his math doesn't add up. Like, we eat bacon because we're a nation of excess, not because we're a nation of exclusively Christian rule.
Also, because
But he should
bacon
take his
is
arguments
awesome.
to the Supreme Court and see how it works out for him.
We also eat bacon because bacon is fucking awesome. I'm just saying. Isn't that enough?
Wait, Sean, don't give Fisher ideas. Lord knows, with this fucking Supreme Court, they might listen.
No, what's sad is with this Supreme Court, it might be 7-2, but he'd still lose.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Wrapping it up, going to our final story. And this time it is not deliciously wrapped in bacon, unfortunately.
Well,
Instead,
then I'm leaving.
It's about the devil. Orange County schools in Florida are now required to allow the Satanic Temple to give out materials to students. Yes, I said that right, the Satanic Temple. Now, recently the school board also allowed both Christians as well as atheist materials in the classroom after a lawsuit was filed and then dismissed by Florida court that was filed by the Florida Free Thought Community. But of course, the Satanic Temple wanted in on some of this fun. Spokesman Lucian Greaves told Raw Story, quote, "My organization would never seek to establish a precedent of disseminating our religious materials in public schools because we believe our constitutional values are better served by respecting a strong separation of church and state. However, if a public school board is going to allow religious pamphlets and full Bibles to be distributed to students, as is the case in Orange County, Florida, we think the responsible thing to do is to ensure that these students are given access to a variety of differing religious opinions as opposed to standing idly by while only one religious voice dominates the discourse and delivers propaganda to our youth." I kind of enjoy this. It's a good example of people not respecting the separation of church and state, getting exactly what they ask for. They think religion should be in our schools. Okay, well, here you go. Here's Christianity, here's Satanism, here's Buddhism, here's atheism. Here you go. All the religion that you want in school. Oh, you only wanted your religion? I guess that's too bad. Maybe you should be careful what you wish for. The devil might be in the details. What do you guys think?
So, I guess I will start by saying, "Hail Satan!" No. This I think might teach people who advocate for religious freedom to be a little more careful. It's kind of funny what happens when you're trying to advocate for the freedom to do something. I mean, we already knew that they weren't. When some of their allies are the people who are claiming it's a Christian country and telling atheists they should leave and saying terrible, terrible things about Muslims, and even some saying terrible, terrible things about Jews and everybody in between. Yeah, so all of us kind of knew it without them actually saying it, but the law doesn't work that way. You don't get to pass what you mean through law without actually saying what you goddamn mean, and now they know. I think. So hopefully they'll learn from this, and I'll continue to sit here and just laugh at it all.
So we actually did a story about this the last time I was on, not about this specific case, but about if they let people inclusively hand out material and all that stuff. And I said if you let everybody do it, it'll be fine, and eventually they're going to decide that nobody can do it. I think the point I was driving at without saying was Scientologists, but I think it's going to be the Satanists that's going to break the school board's back on this one. And can I just point out that Satanists are really dumb? Like they're smart and this is funny and all that, but if you believe in like Satan, like then he's the bad guy and he rules over hell. So I don't get what you get by worshiping him. Maybe some of the audience could send Jeff videos of blood sacrifices and he'll reiterate it to me.
See, this is why
last time I checked, that's
talk
the
ever.
Not the Satanic Temple.
Yeah, I've got a friend who, if I'm not mistaken, considers himself a Satanist, and it's not like they worship the Christian Satan. It's I don't know, but anyway, so back to the story. I honestly I don't know how I feel about it. Like I'm a little torn. And again, just like the Air Force thing, not because I am religious, but just like. I feel like if this was the Flying Spaghetti Monster, folks, I would be all for it, because that was a religion that's not really a religion, that was made up to make a point. Whereas this is an actual religion. So I do think it will have the desired effect, and it'll do that. But like at the same time, to what they admitted, hey, we haven't been doing this in the past because we thought it was unconstitutional. So like I don't know that just because you see somebody else doing something unconstitutional, that then opens the door for you to do something unconstitutional. But at the same time, it does say that there's not a ban on religion in the state. It's in the Constitution. It's that there shall be no favored religion. So I guess maybe as long as everybody's doing it, it's not unconstitutional. So I don't know. Sean, could you weigh in on that?
Hold on, Sean. Before you go, I do have to make a point that I really don't think that they're actually Satanists, and here's why.
No, the Satanic Temple I don't think is. There's a Church of Satan, and then there's the Satanic Temple. I think they're separate one. I think the Satanic Temple is the mock faith, and the Satanic Church is more a legitimate religion. Just
the Satanic Temple basically has been making headlines, trolling Christians whenever they try to get something like a monument erected on public property, or to get religious stuff put into schools. For example, statements like this kind of validate that I think that they're actually trolling. Quote, even as we prefer public policies for respecting secularism, we feel that opportunities such as this to establish an equal voice for contrasting religious opinions in the public square tend to favor marginalized, lesser-known, and alternative religions. So I don't think that they actually believe in the devil, right, or worshiping Beelzebub. They're saying we're going to use this, since this is considered a religion, we're going to inject ourselves into the religious debate and say, well, if Christians can get their materials in the classroom, why can't we? Right?
Yeah. To Jordan's like legal point about like it's not really like, all right, I'm gonna say something controversial or controversial or whatever. It's not really a First Amendment issue like at this point. It's an issue of consistency that makes it a First Amendment issue, because like the First Amendment doesn't really say whether you could stand outside. I think it's protected speech to stand outside of school and hand out whatever you want. But like you can't allow some and ban others and all that. Like that's what makes it. It's really more of a consistency issue. So whatever the school board decides, it's supposed to be a consistent decision. But as far as the Satanists or them not being actual Satanists, like that's really irrelevant. Like I feel bad for the parents, because even though they're the ones who like vote for the school board and probably want their kids to learn Christian stuff in school, I feel bad for them, because I'm sure those Satanist pamphlets look really cool. Like I could just picture, I'm like being serious, like they make them look really attractive to kids, and those parents take it seriously. But you know what? It's the lesson that you learned. They try to include everybody. They said the atheists could come, but like it's the lesson that you learn when you try and do this sort of thing at schools is you're going to get people who are going to troll, and I feel bad for the parents who have to who are really religious and they're earnest about it and they're not trying to push it on anybody else, that their kids are going to come home with like Satan pamphlets and all that.
Let me show you an example of the horrible things that they're handing out. Just the horrible, ungodly, literally ungodly things that they're handing out in the school. Let me show you. Oh, dear God.
But that's what I'm saying. It's hilarious looking.
It really is. It really is. Like I said, they are trolling. They're trolling to make a point. You know, this group it's there to challenge Christians every time they try to instill something, basically to try and knock down the wall between separation of church and state. That's what they're trying to do. I swear I feel that is their main goal.
And my one point is about what I was trying to make is like Jordan is a religious person on the panel. Jordan's a grown man. Like we could argue about religion for fun, all fair, on air, for seriousness, all fair, on air. Like we can do that all we want. But if Jordan's also a father, I would never ever go up to Jordan's children and try and like hand them material that is contrary to the values that he was teaching. Like that's where I feel kind of bad, right? Because they're trolling, but they're trolling with other people's children. But again, I'm in favor of it being everybody or nobody, or you know what I mean. I actually prefer everybody, but I'm just saying I feel kind of bad.
Fuck everybody equally.
And the way that they're doing it is this is applying to everybody. You know, atheist materials also being handed out. You know, why I don't believe or why I'm not a Muslim was one of the things that they handed out. And I can't forget the other, or I forget the other one, the atheist material. But there's nothing stopping the other religions from getting involved now in Orange County, Florida, and passing out their own materials. And it's up to the kids to either throw them away or look at them, whatever, right? But I do ultimately think this will end up with none of them being allowed because it's going to get crazy to try and squeeze all those religions into that one school, which they can now do. Things are going to get nuts, man. Like I said, be careful what you wish for.
So just for the sake of clarity, the Church of Satan does follow basically the teachings of the Satanic Bible, based on which believes in acceptance of the carnal self, according to Wiki. I'll admit I'm cheating when you go in there. And then the Satanic Temple uses the literary Satan. So if you were to take John Milton's Paradise Lost, for example, as a mythological foundation for a non-supernatural religion, so not really believing in. So that's basically what this is. I guess it's described as a atheistic Satan. That it's not a supernatural belief. It's just like almost the equivalent of saying kind of spiritualism, I guess you could call it, and barely even that. More self-discovery stuff.
I'm talking with my friend who, like I say, I'm pretty sure. Okay, Satanism is defined as adherence to the principles of Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan, and the Satanic Temple is not part of that.
Right.
That's why I'm saying that they're trolling, and they're basically trying to say that, you know, all things being equal, we need to respect the Constitution when it comes to religion being injected into public property. And with that message, I completely agree with. And I think
so if it's a religion that exists to make a point, they're basically the spaghetti monster guys. Then I'm completely on their side. Then, like, bravo, go ahead and make their point.
All right. That's it. That's the show. That's the first. I don't know if anybody has anything that they want to share to discuss at all.
I kind of do.
Jordan's probably got to get going.
Nick has a story that he wants to share, but more importantly than that, and the whole rest of the show, tomorrow I'm going to be on Some Say with Thomas Reynolds. So you could catch me on the second hour at 4. So, yeah, throw it to you, Nick.
That's somesay.info or myliberals.com if you want to tune into that live, broadcasting on mix.lr. That's going to be a fun time, some say, with Thomas Reynolds. So catch Sean
check it
on
out.
the
It's a
show
good
as
show.
he debates.
Tom. He's going to bait Tom. It'll be interesting.
Indeed.
Maybe I'll even call in just to yell at Sean a little bit. I mean, it is fun after all, but we'll see. I think I might leave it. But anyway, so my story. This is one I kind of was thinking of bouncing around in my head back when we covered Gamergate. This was the alternative story I wanted to do then, and it's something I've been thinking of. So this is going to take a little bit of a historical narrative here. So lead up to World War II. Yeah, this won't take too long. Lead up to World War II, you got the various crises with the Anschluss of Austria and the Sudetenland annexation, and that crisis that spawned that, and the negotiations around there. And you'll see why I'm mentioning this now in a moment. So what happened there was they sat down, and Hitler basically promised, after the Sudetenland, I'll take nothing more after this, I swear. They signed the treaty, and what's his name? British Prime Minister at the time, I forget his name. It'll come back to me some point. Brings home this paper saying, I think we've secured peace in our time and stuff. Looking back on the event, what seems to have been lacking was the concept that Hitler might be lying, which, surprise, he was. So we learned that one the hard way, that we expect people to follow through with their we hold people to their deals and make them. Huh?
Chamberlain?
What? Chamberlain, yeah.
The...
Neville Chamberlain. Thank you. That's the one. I knew it was a CCH something, but yeah, Neville Chamberlain. The reason I mention that is in light of the recent beheadings of now 3 journalists, 2 American and 1 British. I see a sort of similar trend there with the aspect of Chamberlain not realizing they're lying, and how that whole incident and the events after that, the Second World War, kind of changed the nature of international politics and negotiating with nations in conflict, is we might be seeing something similar developing in the field of, I guess you could say, on-site reporting. We've had journalists actually killed now because they were American citizens and British citizens, where their neutrality and their stance as journalists was not respected. And when you think about it, it's almost surprising this hasn't happened more, given the animosity generated by America and Britain in the world. It's very surprising that journalists of those nationalities haven't been targeted like this before. So I guess my thought is, maybe this is the point where we actually start seeing a change in the direction of journalism. Maybe now is a point where we start to move, where I guess you could say on-the-ground reporting starts to become a practice that is not necessarily called into question, but perhaps brought back to the discussion table. I think we're reaching a point where now that ISIS is doing it, it's going to open the door for many other places to think of to do similar things, to go, I don't give a damn if you're a journalist, you're an American citizen, so you're going to pay now. And I think this is a discussion that needs to be had. What do you guys think?
No, man, it's not going to change anything. Journalists have been killed in action before. This isn't. I mean, I'm not trying to, belittle the deaths of these 2 brave men, but this isn't going to change anything.
Okay. All right. Sean, what do you think?
Can you repeat the question, sir?
I guess the basic one would be: do you think that it's necessary to perhaps have a discussion on on-site reporting, and how would the recent beheadings of people based on their nationality affect that? Do you think that we might see a change in policy for how on-site reporting is done? Will there be more caution to send nationals, reporters of certain nationalities to certain areas, or will we continue to try to adhere to the standard that journalists should not be harmed, they're neutral parties, and work on that?
So it's interesting because you literally can't pass a law, like, to prevent journalists from a non-national, like, that would fail, like, the equal protection and all that, and it would fail the First Amendment because it would be Congress limiting the press. So, like, that's a problem. Should the news agencies show more caution when sending their journalists over there? Maybe send people who, for lack of a better term, blend in. That's really up to them. It's weird because we're basically going to a war over these two beheadings, and I don't want to put any blame on these guys. They were trying to find facts. They're trying to do what press ought to do, but, like, it seems like the news agencies should try and do something. I'm sure they do everything they can to protect their employees. Like, they don't want their employees hurt in any way. But as far as like, journalists, like, you can't really limit them. Or our country can't really limit them, and like, it's not a situation where they can embed, and that leads to a whole other ethical issues about how they report if they're embedded with the troops. It's just like, you want people to be safe, and you don't want to have to go to war if they're not safe. It's not a situation like the preachers going to North Korea and, like, leaving Bibles there and then getting like these people are going there to report and fact find, and, like, they assume some level of danger, but they're not, like, doing something that's more selfish, like trying to convert people in North Korea when you know it's illegal, and you probably get the woman who finds the Bible in trouble. So it's a weird issue that the U.S. legally should not have any authority to regulate, but there will probably be something.
Right, and this is what I'm kind of thinking is, I mean, you're right, they can't legally regulate anything, but, and Jordan does make a good point, journalists have been killed before. But there's something about the direct targeting of these people, as not because, and with complete disregard for the fact that they are journalists, and exclusively based on the fact that they're American and British, that I think is what is shocking about these in particular, and why I think this might bring some discussion and some policy revision to the table. Is this isn't like they're on the battle scene and they're accidents. No, these people were literally captured because of what they are, and because they're citizens of X country, which is, it's interesting, and it's, you don't think so, Jordan?
Well, this actually might sound bad. I'm sorry, Jordan, I just want to point one thing out. This actually might sound bad, but a good idea, if you're a journalist, to go overseas, is to maybe take an implantable GPS device, like, that links up. Like, I mean, I don't see ISIS as a super sophisticated unit where they could detect things like that. Like, you know, for your own safety, so, like, special forces can find out where they are and maybe do a rescue, because there was rumors that Obama tried a rescue of one of the journalists that didn't work out with special forces. So, like, maybe something like that, but
it's not rumors. It was an official statement from the U.S. government. But yeah, I mean, that's not a bad idea, I guess. I feel sorry for the poor bastard to come after the first one does that, and ISIS finds out, like, that's how they got found. God knows what kind of torture they're going to put those people through to find that device. To your point, is this going to change things? One, it should, but not with journalism. What this should change is, like, our stupid war on terror, and our you can even, since we're liberals, why not? Let's go ahead and tie it into the war on drugs as well. Like, whenever you declare war on an ideology, then you end up fighting an ideological war. That's why in the past we haven't, even though journalists have been killed, we haven't seen them, you know, prisoners of war with soldiers or something. Like, they're not getting singled out, you know, in a war where there is no American presence for being American. You know, like, that hadn't happened. Maybe I see what you're saying. The problem is, because this is an ideological war. Like, it's not a war against a nation. It's a war against terror or whatever. So then what are terrorists going to do in a war against terror? They're going to be terrorists, and they're going to come after the media. And the reason, so maybe the better analogy to show that nothing's going to change is that, like, this is maybe, you know, one of the first times this has happened to American media, but it's happened to aid workers for years now in this dumb war on terror. You know, the Red Crescent and the Red Cross have been attacked,
yeah,
stuff like that, and aid workers aren't, you know, fleeing or aren't leaving these war zones. Like, and I think I think there's a lot of journalists out there with every bit as much of integrity and zeal for the truth as aid workers have a zeal. So yeah, I don't think this is going to change anything.
And I'll speak for myself on this. Like I feel we do benefit a lot from journalists who put themselves at risk. I love Vice.
Oh, of course we do. There's no denying that.
No, I'm saying, like, I love Vice, but like it helps you appreciate like the danger that a lot of them put themselves in. Like, I don't want to bring up a certain case, but we've all heard of Anderson Cooper being beaten up, and like Fox News people or MSNBC foreign correspondents getting beaten up. Like, and we usually laugh at those stories, like, because we're mean. Like, when they get a couple punches, we do laugh at those. But there are very serious cases of them being in serious danger. And, like, the two journalists and the courage that the journalists, one of their families had, I can't remember which one, so I'm not going to throw attach a name to it. But the one's family who said that he wasn't pro-war and his death shouldn't be used to launch wars, like, the fact that they're like not trying to get revenge, it's also noble. Like, these guys put themselves at risk to inform us, and it's very like foreign correspondence. It's very nice that some of it is away from the way the media is here, where it's very hand in hand and report the official narrative. And the fact that ISIS targets them, it does prove that they are like shitty people and they're scumbags. Well,
it also proves they know how a war on terror works, and they're giving us what we asked for, and we're trying to give them what they're asking for, because like they know that if they can use this to goad us into war, then we're going to be the ones killing innocents. So it kind of ties into the Bradley Manning story earlier. And so, like, whenever I say this should change policy, it doesn't mean that I'm saying we should go the other way and start declaring unwinnable wars on concepts and ideologies, and do things that governments are actually supposed to do, and go to war when governments are supposed to go to war, and stop these stupid situations from happening.
And I'm actually gonna call it a sophisticated barbarism, because part of ISIS's campaign is media control. Like, they want to control the message. So
they know what they're doing, man.
They're using barbaric tactics, but the ends that they're reaching is to control the message. Like, so it's horrible and it's disgusting, but it's like the thinking behind it is sophisticated. So like don't pretend that they're all to use a throwaway word, but don't pretend they're all savages out there. These are smart people that they're violent, but they know what they're doing. Like, not that they're going to meet us in New York next week or any of that propaganda, but they're smart.
Yeah, and exactly, and if journalism changes because of this, then ISIS gets what they want, because there's nobody there to shine a light on them and show their evil. If we go to war with them because they killed American journalists, then ISIS gets what they want. They goad us into a fight. We become the bad guys because there's collateral damage in any war, and either way they win. The only way that they don't turn this into a W is if journalism doesn't change and our policy does change, but not towards retaliation, away from retaliation.
Okay. Jeff, what do you think?
Oh, I'm not going to weigh in on this one.
Oh,
this is your guys.
you're no fun.
You already know my position on the whole thing. It's just what Jordan was saying. There's not a whole lot I can add to it. It's that, we do this, we give ISIS exactly what they want. We bomb them, we give them a great recruiting tool, and there are limited options really, and they just continue to goad us. I mean, the shitty recruiting, or the shitty video that they released to us that was supposedly highly edited and highly produced. Right, this video that they released out to try to goad us into, oh, look what's gonna happen. You could come at us, bro. You know what I mean? Oh, look, we beheaded another journalist, because they did catch another journalist. And they're doing everything they can to bring us in, because once again, as Chelsea Manning had pointed out, we're their focus, we're their target. They wouldn't exist without us. If we just were like, oh, sorry, ISIS, we're not taking your bait, they're gonna get pissed off and throw a tantrum.
And I just want to
ultimately they're going to not have an enemy.
And I just want to point out, obviously, people in ISIS don't want to be dead. Like, they don't want to be dropped. Like, the majority of them don't want to have bombs dropped on them or be shot by like foreign soldiers or anything. But what we're talking about is two different things. It's like in the original War on Terror when it was against Al-Qaeda. It's Al-Qaeda, the people that attacked us, and the people that are planning attacks in other places. And then there's the idea of Al-Qaeda, the idea that they'll inspire other people to pick up the banner. Like, part of the expansion of the War on Terror is not we got them where they were and they fled to other countries. It's that people were like, oh, they're fighting the good fight. Let's join them, and they hang under the same banner. Because a lot of the Al-Qaeda affiliates weren't Al-Qaeda affiliates. I mean, that's why ISIS is ISIS now, because it was an Al-Qaeda affiliate that wasn't really under the control of Al-Qaeda, and they became ISIS. So we're talking about the idea of ISIS grows. You can't fight an ideological battle with bullets. Like, you can kill a bunch of them, and you can do all that, and you can defeat and avenge these two journalists and all that stuff, and get the guy who executed them. But you're not going to change the mind of somebody who thinks that the Middle East is being repressed by America, or thinks that this bombing is a bombing against the Sunnis and not against ISIS. Like, that's what we're trying to say.
And it's valid points, though. They're all your points are valid, guys. It's just, it's difficult. 'Cause see, I'm also of the opinion that if you don't do anything to ISIS, they also get what they want. And that's and that's free reign in the regions that they have, and no fear of American involvement or support on more further actions in the region. And I mean, it sounds like a talking point, and I mean, a lot of people will say it's prideful stuff, but there is something to be said for not wanting a group to get away with conducting war in a certain way. And part of it isn't necessarily a matter of pride. Part of it is a matter of it can change everything. It can change how everybody starts fighting wars. And in many ways, you don't know how to respond to it, how to do battle with it. And so I think that's part of the reason why people push back. Like, for example, why the Vietnam War went on for so long, and why the Viet Cong were such a target was not necessarily that pride. Oh, we can't let these people defeat the mighty U.S. No, it was we can't let them win like this. We can't let these people beat us in such an unconventional way, or that's how war will go, and that's how war will be from that point on, because that's what works. And so you get into a trap of how do you not give them what they want, while at the same time not being caught in the same trap. And I think that's the same problem we're having back and forth for the past 30 years. And given the way wars evolved over centuries, we might continue to have it for a long time. Anyway, so I guess that's just my story, and that's what I just wanted to bring to the table. Some thoughts I had.
All right. Does anybody have anything else that they want to talk about? Anything maybe from the show that you didn't get to touch on during the shorter segments, or any points that you wanted to bring up that you didn't get to? We can elaborate them on a little further.
One quick point would be it looks like Scotland's going to stay in the Union.
Fair enough. What happened to freedom, Sean?
Sean, they exercise their freedom to stay.
Hey, we don't know yet, right? The votes are still coming in, right?
It's still uncertain, but it's like 59 to 41. It's pretty heavy on the no side.
Well, it ain't over till it's over, right?
Right. But
So,
it's
we'll have to watch
interesting. Sean's like flipping out.
He's like, freedom. He's about ready to put on like Braveheart paint and stuff, and
ready to run over with a great claymore and chase all through England, yelling at everybody who voted against it.
I'm kind of disappointed we didn't have a gun story tonight, because Dan and Steven aren't here, so we could have actually had a conversation without crazy, I'm not going to change my mind, I've got it made up, jumping in. It sucks. We should have had a gun story tonight.
Oh well, you did want to run.
He's gonna see that.
The plays. What is it? The woman shoots people coming into her home.
Oh yeah.
Jordan.
Do you want to bring it up if we got time? If you want to.
Dude, I don't know anything about it. I know somebody got shot over a PlayStation. That's all I know.
Yeah, I don't. I didn't really look at it, but let's see what we got here. If you guys want to, or we can call it a night. It's fine.
Sure. Why not bring it up? Just do it kind of off the cuff.
Yeah. We're doing it acoustic style, gang. It's acoustic. We're off. Unplugged show tonight.
Is about just fucking around.
Yeah. So let me find it again. Where'd it go? Damn it, where was that thing? Oh, there it is, I think. Yeah, here it is. Okay. So, interesting story on HuffPost. I guess I'll read it out. The title is a 16-year-old girl fatally shoots gamer for his PS4 while her baby looks on. Already, this story is rolling in all kinds of wind. A teenage girl shot and killed a man as she and her boyfriend tried to rob the victim of his PlayStation 4. Oh, okay. Interesting. Victim was a 28-year-old. Alleged shooter was an unnamed 16-year-old girl whose 16-month-old baby was sitting in the car, only a few feet away during the robbery. Suspects were sitting in the car when the victim in question, Daniel John Zeitz, approached at about 9:30 p.m. Oh, Lord. The woman tried to pull the PS4 into the car. The man resisted. And then the girlfriend pulled the trigger, which killed him. So that's interesting. Basically, he's basically a really botched attempt at robbery at the time. Interesting that the woman's name is Vivian. Very interesting.
Vivian's a fairly common.
What do you guys think of that?
Do you know what kind of weapon she had?
Oh, Vivian is the last name. Nathaniel Vivian is the. It looks like he's the dude. He's the man who was trying to grab it, and then the girlfriend's gun went off. Okay, so the girlfriend's name is non-disclosed. The man who tried to take the PS4 in the first place was Nathaniel Vivian. That's the thing. Okay.
So the girl that did the shooting wasn't 16. The person that got shot was 16.
No, the girl was 16. The victim was 28 years old.
Okay. Do you know what kind of weapon she used?
It was a 25 caliber handgun.
Oh, I've got one of those in the truck with me right now.
Jordan, you killed him.
Well, that's funny. That's a European caliber. They're not real common in America. But they're real.
I don't hear those often. You hear 22s, but not
a lot of your
25.
Saturday night specials are 25s. Your little cheap $100 tiny handguns. So this really isn't a great argument for gun control, because one of the few gun laws we do have is age restrictions on purchasing handguns, and you have to be 21 not only to purchase a handgun but to purchase handgun ammunition. So this is not, there's not a win here for gun control advocates. I think this is a story that shows how evil video games are.
Yeah, but here's a more important.
No.
Here's a more important point. Since I could hear everything you guys said, but I was frozen and couldn't unmute, I am all about Scottish freedom, and the fact that the English have rigged the election against them is obviously.
Of course. Hold on. This is funny because I know you're joking, but this is funny because you do hear this double logic all the time. It's freedom if they vote to do one thing, but if they choose to do the other thing, then they're just been manipulated by things. They're not exercising freedom that way. That they can't do that. It's like
our foreign policy in the Middle East. We want them to have democracy as long as they elect people we want them to elect.
Whatever. No, that's only funny given some of the stuff going on online now. So it's just funny. I know you're joking, but that logic is being used way too much.
No, it's self-determination, right?
Yes.
And self-determination is not always the same thing as freedom, but self-determination can be a part of freedom.
Yes.
In this case, unfortunately, it's not.
All right, but so back to the story. Jordan, There's one thing I don't see in the article. I don't see the age of the boyfriend in question, and that might be where the age restriction on the gun may come from. Which again does go back to your point that it still doesn't really help the gun control thing, because then you have someone who could legally purchase the weapon.
Just in case anyone's curious what a 25 caliber round looks like, there you go. At the 25.
And by the way, by anybody, Jordan means anybody in Scotland. Wink, wink.
And the way you tell a 25 apart from a 22 by looking at it is that a 25 is a centerfire round, whereas a 22 is a rimfire round and won't have a primer in the middle like that.
Yeah, centerfire rounds don't seem very common. I'm guessing they leave distinctly different shell casings.
No, centerfire rounds are the most common there is. Rimfire rounds are very rare.
Gotcha. All right, shows what I know about bullets.
You can't make a rimfire round feed very well in an auto-loading magazine, and they're not as reliable as a centerfire is.
Gotcha. Shows what I know about bullets. I'm learning too, audience. Thanks for educating.
And that's why we're here. Hey, we're here to teach.
We're a school today. So that's an interesting story.
There's
no, Jordan. I know you're making a jab at the video games thing, but fuck off. No. I think what this shows is that someone wanted an expensive piece of hardware and decided to try and rob someone for it. That's about it. Could have very well just as been a cell phone.
If you did want to point out,
well,
what were you saying, Jeff? I'm sorry.
Here's something that proves you wrong, Jordan, about how video games are evil and video gamers are horrible people. And I know you're saying that in jest, but apparently Zeitz was known to his online friends as Phobos, right? That was his online nickname. And apparently he was a very well-respected person in the gaming community whose teammates have managed to support his family with a GoFundMe page that has raised about $14,000 to cover his funeral expenses. Sounds like a general.
Okay, that's a really awesome story, and this is a tragedy that, you know what, I'm not even going to do it. Not even with a disclaimer. I'm not going to make a joke this soon after this event, but I was going to say something.
Jordan, you kind of already did, so be committed.
Well, I'm not going to make a joke at the expense of.
All right.
Jordan, you can't put half of your foot in your mouth. You have to go through it the whole way.
Well, Sean, you would certainly be the expert in that. The other reason I'm not going to make a joke is because God knows what Sean's going to follow it up with, and I don't want to get pulled from the TYT Network for something Sean said, because I can only apologize so many times. But now, hey, but to make it slightly serious, I guess if you wanted to point something out that maybe is kind of a problem, that 25 caliber handgun that she used probably cost $100, whereas the PlayStation cost $600.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess you could point maybe that. Now, that's also because those 25 handguns are cheap pieces of junk. But, you know, and I'm not, I've expressed in the past that, like, I'm not on board with a lot of these price-based, you know, regulations of firearms, because it is one of our rights. And there's so many rights that poor people already have less access to than rich people. But I don't know. That just, I want to, even though that's not a point I necessarily endorse, I did want to put it out there. You know, maybe you guys can weigh in. I don't know.
It is.
Price control lead to a whole other like thing of issues for me.
Yeah, it's tricky. See, I fully endorse. As I mentioned before, I've been persuaded more in favor of the gun rights camp after watching a couple people express their opinion on it and stuff, and the fact that you can be pro-gun rights and also pro-gun control in some ways. But I actually wouldn't mind some elements of price control, but of course it is tricky. Jordan, would you think it more prudent for it to have price control on ammunition instead, or is that the same thing just under a different name?
I think that's even almost worse.
All right.
Okay. What I would say is I don't agree with the price controls like in any way, shape, or form. If you were gonna have a permit system that would add a cost equivalent like throughout whatever gun you buy, Like that would be one thing, but like price controls, like they screw up so much and they'll screw up so much in like the gun market. I can't. Like I can't endorse price controls in any way, shape, or form. And besides, if you force like gun companies to raise their prices a certain amount, you're gonna make certain companies who have cheaper products make more money, and the inverse. You know what I mean? It's not a great idea.
A lot of unreliable, even more unsafe guns. I had never thought of that. That's a good point. But to the ammunition thing, the reason why I've got a problem with it on twofold, because it doesn't really punish bad players in guns. At least people, like, there's a lot of crimes of passion in America, and that's where the gun availability really does become a problem. In terms of, like, every time there's a mass shooting, people start talking about, like, ammunition prices and how cheap it is. First off, ammunition's not cheap. Secondly, the mass shooters, like, these guys very rarely get arrested, right? They normally die. Like, they go there planning to die. So they're not going to have an ammunition price ban, or not price ban, ammunition, artificially inflating the price. It doesn't mean anything. They don't care if they go into debt. They'll rack up a credit card because they're not planning on.
That's true.
And if they do plan on coming out, they're going to be in jail for the rest of their lives.
Yeah,
so I think.
Nobody says I shouldn't max out this credit card before I suddenly die. Like it's not a real thing. Like
hookers and blow all the way before death, baby.
I got no regard for human life, but darn it, I won't run up death. That's immoral.
I will not stick this up.
Jordan, we have to draw the moral line somewhere, after all. Sorry, Sean.
Well, what's funny, though, is no regard for human life, won't run up the debt. It's pretty much the Republican Party motto right now. So I don't know if that's a joke or if. And then the other thing is, shooting it's a lot of things, but one of the things it is a sport. And even if it's not a sport, it's a skill. And like any other skill, it requires repetition, not only to get better, but to get safer, right? So if you do jack up the prices of ammunition, then what's going to happen is people are going to buy guns, and like they're going to have a gun laying around the house that they never use. And those are the ones the kids find. Like people aren't going to get out and learn how to safely operate them and qualify with them and stuff like that. So if you do approach it, economically, you got to put it on the guns, not the ammunition.
And if you do jack up the price of ammunition, like it's not going to happen over the course of one day. So what you're going to see is the greatest ammo rush in history.
Yeah, that's a good point. That would definitely happen.
Those bullets are out. And besides, there's a lot of
and it would be cheap ammunition too, because on the news of that, the companies would start producing the cheapest quality ammunition as fast as they could to get to flood it as fast as they could, knowing that it would change. So that would definitely be a thing.
They flood it at a slightly inflated rate that's still under the other rate. It would be
and poor quality too.
It would be an amazing thing. It would literally the amount of bullets sold. Because we see it every time people.
You would see people TPing their houses in bullets.
But I'm saying every time we see a shooting and people get afraid of gun control, we're like impressed by the amount of guns that are sold. Like if you said, because these laws would have to take time, we're gonna put a 200% excise tax on ammunition starting January 1st. It would be amazing, like how many people would buy bullets, like.
And first of all, that happened. That's already happened. You still, to this day, as long Sandy Hook was, 2 years ago now? There was a huge gun scare then. Like, you couldn't find an AR-15 for 6 or 8 months. Now, but because of that, everybody started making them and hoarding them up, and the bottom's falling out. Like, before the gun scare, AR-15s, like, for a decent entry-level AR-15, you're looking at $700, $800. They're $400 or $500 now, but during the scare they were like $1,500, $2,000. But 22 ammunition still the cheapest, most readily. Like you used to be able to buy a brick of 22 ammo, 500 rounds for like $15. Now if you can find one of those bricks, it's going to be like between $35 and $50. So like that, literally from a completely manufactured event, that like there was no chance of ammunition like happening. This not only was there a run on ammunition, it still really hadn't ended. It's mostly over with, and really 22 and 22 mag, which is a different round, is the only thing you really see it in anymore. But yeah, like man, if there actually was a law that was going to go into effect that said a fake, like, or there was going to be an excise tax on ammunition, ammo would be gone the next day. They can't keep up with demand.
And not only that, I'm in New York, so I've seen what a ridiculous excise tax does to a market, and that's with cigarettes. Like, people can make cigarettes, and that might not seem logical in other states, like you guys' states. Like, I've been all the way down I-95. I've been in all these different states. It doesn't seem logical to make cigarettes in other states, but the police are arresting people with homemade cigarettes because if you create an excise tax and there's people who have the means to make stuff, there's a lot of soldiers who know how to make bullets, former soldiers, former military, a lot of gun enthusiasts that know how to make bullets. Like, you're gonna
I know how to load ammunition. That's really not difficult at all.
But I'm saying you're gonna get a black market of bullets, like we have in cigarettes in New York. It's going to be, and by the way, you're gonna get a lot of people who know how to make better bullets. Like, the Marines can make better bullets. Like,
oh my God! I just realized what would happen. You would see the return of manufacturing. Manufacturers would come back. You'd see people putting time and quality into products. Fuck, you'd see independent bullet manufacturers making ads about our bullets are high quality, hand craftsmanship and stuff. Holy fuck! It would bring the artisan industry back. I almost want to do it just for that. God, the artisan industry was great. It was that's where you got quality goods of anything.
It would bring the black market. It would bring the black market upon
it. Would be black market, but man, if you could
considering black markets,
utilize it again.
Considering black markets are already enforced by bullets and gunfire, I don't need a black market for gun bullets. Like, it's so dumb.
I would like to see a return of the artisans though, because man, those were the days of craftsmanship.
I hate/love to break it to you, Nick, but artisanry never left gun manufacturing. That's still alive and well.
I believe that one, yeah. All right.
I'm ready to move on completely. I do have one point. If Steven's listening, it's just gonna take me.
God, Jeff, mute him! He's gonna read the damn declaration again.
Of event events.
Mute him.
Becomes necessary. No, I'm not gonna do it. But
okay. All right.
I'm gonna be on Tom's radio show, by the way. Just so you guys know, it's Some Say with Thomas Reynolds and Jeff. How do I find it if I'm a listener?
MyLiberals.com.
Yeah, MyLiberals.com. It's an amazing show, and it's gonna get more amazing. I'll be on at 4 in the second hour, but I'm contractually obligated to ask you guys to watch the first hour too.
There you go. Contractually obligated.
Because that helps the message so much. I was ordered to say this, guys.
So, Nick, when are you going to come down here and come hunting and shooting guns?
Damn it, Jordan. I don't know. When I have money and time, sir. At the moment, I have neither. Maybe someday, though. I'll let you know. It's an interesting prospect. I got to think about it more.
Well, truth be told, you'd probably just want to come down and shoot guns because to get an out-of-state hunting license is ridiculously expensive.
I would be interested in trying guns and drinking too, obviously. Fuck. See the sights. Besides, it sounds. No, not at the same time. Sounds like there's not much else to do in Arkansas. Burn.
Ouch.
Well, where I live, that's kind of true, but I chose that. There's certainly plenty to do in Arkansas.
You're like, that's the point.
Yeah.
That's not a bug, it's a feature.
Alright,
guys. Gonna wrap it up. Thank you guys for joining us for the second hour. Here at TYT Community, thank you guys for presenting the stories. Generally having a good time here on the show. We'll be back tomorrow. Social Justice Show. I'll be guest hosting that for Rhiannon, of course. Until she comes back eventually one of these days. So we've got that tomorrow night after the Young Turks main show, 8 p.m. Eastern, here on TYT Nation. We'll have the post, the link posted up and everything on the Facebook page, and of course TYT Talk will also have that shared out. Thank you for sharing us out and everything, and everybody watching. So, and thank you guys for joining us, and thank you everybody for watching at home. Hope you enjoyed the show. Appreciate your comments and everything like that, and just appreciate you watching. If you want to help us out, if you haven't already, subscribe. Of course, even if you found the show throughout the network or through the network and you want to help us out, please subscribe to know when we do our next videos or release any segments that you might have missed from the live show. And of course, we post a whole live show up after. No, there will be ads on it, but because man's got to eat, right? But for the most part, the show's 100% free to watch whenever you want on YouTube. And of course, we'll have the clips released throughout the week. If you want to be on the show, let me know. JeffW@TYTNetwork.com. We may be having Tom join us instead of us coming to him. He might come to us in October, so we'll be glad to have him. Anyone else wants on the show? JeffW@TYTNetwork.com or our Facebook page, Facebook.com/TYTNation or Facebook.com/TYT Community. And let's see. One more thing. Patreon. Thank you to all our patrons. Shout out to you guys. You help make the show happen. You help it so I can afford to get more stuff for the show. Really appreciate it. And that's about it, man. Follow me on Twitter, Jeff's Politics. Follow the show at TYT Community, and we'll see you tomorrow night. And Social Justice.
Catch me on the radio. Some say
Show on the radio tomorrow before the show for 4 p.m. Eastern. Some say info. All right, guys.
And hey guys, sign up for the TYT Network civil rights trip. We got to make that happen. That's coming through my neck of the woods. It's actually going to go like right through the part of the state I grew up in. Those of you watching the show, get on that, man, so that they can reach their minimum or whatever. And as an added bonus, you'll get to hang out with the progressive in Arkansas.
Yeah, that's the only TYT person they could get to do the trip.
Ouch.
No, because they said
to be fair, it's one of the better TYT people to do the trip.
One of the more known, not better. We don't make judgment calls like that on this show.
Sorry, I forgot making judgment calls is too non-PC. My bad, guys. We're all equal in our special snowflake status.
I was just making a joke because they said it's an undecided TYT member because they don't know who's going to be free at that time. But, yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, good night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Good night. God
Good
bless.
night, everybody.
Salut.